Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. This evening is the 30th of January 2021. And my thought tonight, my talk, I should say, um, how sex has become the most important thing in a relationship. That is, why is there such a super emphasis on this in the last 60 to 75 years? Why has this become a big issue that is talked about and promoted in movies, uh, in PG movies and R-rated movies? Um, what is there? This we also have what we call subliminal um, advertisements that shows that there's sex in certain movies that you don't see, but you're back here unconsciously you read it, you see it, but consciously you don't see it. So this is a bombardment of people here in the United States, but it's not just here in the United States. It's a preoccupation with this. It's like almost as though sex is a drug. Um, I remember reading a statement. Um, this has probably been less than a year ago. That a woman who was involved in sex, it was like a drug to her. She had to have sex every day, even a couple times a day to to live on a high, so to speak. And so what's happened to what I would call the male and female relationships that is taking place in a marriage or partnerships is that there's this preoccupation. This is it's all over the place, and it doesn't mean I'm against sex in the regard with a relationship, but it's usually with one person. It's not going to be with you know many people. And it seems as though we've opened up Pandora's box. That is, so many people are preoccupied with this. Um, I can remember, as a younger adult, a younger teenager, this preoccupation by almost all males and even females, so to speak. But it's now I look at these things and I see it's the wrong. It's getting the it's putting the carriage before the horse. Don't you see that? Um, a relationship is got to be based upon a heart to heart deal. There has to be that. And it also has to be deal with what I would call being honest with one another. And building relationship takes time. It just doesn't occur overnight. And part of the deal with the relationships is that it has to be based on friendship at first. It cannot be based upon, having a sexual partner per se. It has to be based upon friendship because there are going to always be ups and downs in relationships. And you need to have that friendship base in order to come to that when things are not working well in the marriage or partnership. So there seems to be not only just a preoccupation with that, but that people are looking for a new drug. You see, almost with the deal with sex. But and many people will argue. In fact, I would say 90% of the people, if not more, is that sex is intimacy. Oh, really? I don't think it is. I think there has to be something before that in order to enjoy sex with one another. And that has to be being intimate with yourself, that is having heart to heart communication to build something substantial and a goal working together, the two becoming one. So you know, I don't have all the answers, but I do see that simply is that the world itself and where we live at, and what I see is this enormous preoccupation with sex. And there's, that's why men are in pornography. And then even women are into pornography. And I think it's an escape mechanism too. I believe it simply is that many adults are going through enormous pressures in life, and this is a way to get off that so-called boat and have free time, so to speak. And it's not right. So, and I contend to be what I call more old-fashioned than most people, because I look at it in a different regard. It's a commitment to one person, not with a state marriage, not with a church marriage, but a relationship between one and the other. That is, you make that your commitment between one and the other. It doesn't come from what I would call, from the state or the church. That's all baloney. Why would you need a license to get married? So, I found the other day, I guess it's been a couple of weeks ago, maybe a little longer, in an old Bible here. My parents, that is my mom's Bible, was the marriage license. So my parents didn't get married in a church, which is really weird, because my parents were very religious. They were really into Christianity. But I think that all had to do with my mom's parents, who decided not to come to the wedding or to the marriage ceremony. And that changed everything. Or maybe simply as my dad didn't have a lot of money to do that. I don't know. I find that really odd. I wish that I asked my dad or my mom about that in a deeper way. But anyway, I kind of got off the subject here a little bit. But anyway, why would you need a license to do that? Again, that goes back to my perspective. Simply is that we're not free. We have to have permission to do one thing or the other. We have to have the permission to drive a car. We have to have a license. If you're going to go in business, you have to have a license. And you have to get, want to get married, you got to have a license. Again, shows that we're not truly free in our society. But there's things that simply is that really concerns me, simply is because many people are getting hurt by situations with relationships. That is, because one party is not on the same level as the other one is. So one is thinking something much higher, and the other one's a lower pace. You see, and there's a lot of hurt people out there. I mean, a lot of hurt people, and I would think that goes to regard to being hurt in relationships. And then if you've been married and you've been divorced, that's another big hurt. And usually it's men who fail. Not all of them, but most of them are. In the relationships that divorces take place, it's usually men are not faithful to their wives. So I don't jump on the bandwagon with everybody else that says simply is that you can jump inside the bed with anybody you want to, and that kind of kills the whole idea, doesn't it? To be single for one particular person, being together with just two of you. A lot of these ideas are coming from Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead is a key person involved in the past in the field of psychology. And her perspective was simply this, that she wanted to break all kinds of these codes that we had developed. In other words, like, for example, having three partners in a marriage, having two men or one woman, and having kids, or having interracial marriages, and or either there's no marriage, but there's three or four people in the house that are adults, and there's children. So who's the mother? You see, so there might be two women, three women, and one man. A lot of this stuff was started during the late '60s, mid '60s, part of the free love uh, program. And so Margaret Mead was basically, let's just break down the walls of anything here, and let's just do whatever we want to do. Well, people get hurt. People get hurt in all areas, because there's a seriousness of basically um, you have made a commitment and you're going to be with one person. And with this other type of lifestyle, then you confuse the kids. It causes enormous problems for the kids. There's not enough also trauma that's going on with family already. And then you add this into it, and that makes it even more trauma. Because the kid, the baby, doesn't know who his mom is or his daddy is. So there's not a pinpoint type of relationship that the child understands what's going on. You're setting the child up into other areas that's going to cause them more trauma. I think a lot of these people we think are such glorious people who invent all these stupid ideas are there to actually cause more problems for people, that is the family, you see. And a lot of people are open to these ideas because they've seen their parents have failed. And so they think, well, let's try some other way, a new way, and see if this would work. Let's try this, something else. This is such and such. It seems my grandparents were, both of them were never. There was no divorce in either side. In other words, my mom's grandparents, her parents, that is, they lived together until my granddad passed away. And then also, on the other side, both my father's parents, they lived together too. There was no consideration of even divorce. I know this simply is here in South Carolina compared to other states. You cannot get a divorce here in South Carolina. It takes a year of separation. Other places, it's a matter of very little time, maybe a month, 2 months, and it's over with. The whole idea of the South Carolina law is basically to get people to reconcile and get back together. That's the whole idea of the 1 year deal. I don't know if it works or not. I'm just saying simply is that there's different laws for different states based upon this. But going back to the whole issue here is, as I call it, intimacy. And I've argued before about this with men or even women here. Simply is that when I communicate, is that it's critical to have that heart-to-heart intimacy with someone that you can really rely upon, that knows your secrets, knows your ups and your downs and your struggles as a man or woman, and that you're aiming for the same goal. Because if you're not aiming for the same goal, then you're already in a mess. See. Most people get in trouble by basically just simply having highs in a relationship and they're ready to get married. They haven't really dealt with what I call the lows in relationships. So they haven't dealt with some struggles in the dating relationship or just being with each other. They haven't dealt with um, issues that basically are confrontational. They're on a high note, and when they get into being married, they're not able to handle it, or they sugarcoat it. Mm. I've watched certain people, and I've watched the trauma-based type of deal. Let me explain what I mean by that. I've dealt with some people in the past, and I've watched how their attitude is when you may have done something wrong, and they stop communicating. Now, where does that come from? Some have simply they don't communicate at all. They just simply go cold turkey. You tell me something, folks. If there was a friendship there, I'm not talking about relationship. I'm just talking about friendship. Suddenly, the person doesn't communicate anymore. Where does that take place? It takes place because either the man or the woman learned that from their parents, or maybe through a television show. But most of often is through the parents. They've seen how their parents deal with one another. So if you don't treat me right, or you made a mistake here, then I don't talk to you anymore. So that is, it's like, so you're not going to solve the problem here. You're just going to exacerbate it. You're going to make it worse. This is what people do. They're still children. They still, if I supposedly did something wrong in a relationship or whatever, they just simply, and I'm just giving an example. And you say, well, I'm sorry, I made a mistake here. And it's not, and even it's on a friendship level. This is not, this is not on a relationship level, okay? And you've done nothing wrong in reality, because you find out simply is that the person was really not being true to themselves. You see, this is why we have so much troubles with relationships. This is why so many people think they know something about relationships, but then what happens simply is when they get into this type of situation, they do the same thing they did before. So they simply don't communicate. Or I'm going to punish you for what you did to me, or you didn't do. It may be something simple. I've seen that occur a couple of times with me in friendships. So this reveals a lot about where they are at, maturity wise. And it's kind of scary because simply they've learned this from their parents. And they claim that they're mature, but they're not mature, you see. And, you know, and I'm not saying, I'm not talking about something even super serious. I'm just talking about something in a friendship matter. And so you're thinking, what is going on here? And you realize simply this person is either has learned all these things from their parents, and they will complain. They will complain about their parents in this regard. Simply is that that's what they did, and yet that person is doing the same thing that their parents did. See, habits are really hard to break. Habits are very hard to break. You see. Another thing I can understand simply is in relationships also is to deal with what I would call Someone's been hurt in the past. Usually a woman's been hurt, and or a man has been hurt too. And so they don't jump back into the groove, so to speak, and some don't. Some never do. In fact, they never even enter the picture anymore. They're not interested in relationships anymore. That's something in the past, either divorce or tragedy. I never understood. I mean, this is this sharing some things just from my own family in regard to my parents. My dad just didn't know how to communicate, and if he did communicate, he was what I would call a very insecure person, a very insecure man, and so he had to come down heavy on my mom. See. And then also something I learned is that my parents were arguing over stupid stuff, when reality simply is that's just a symptom of a deeper problem. In other words, there's the smoke here, what you're arguing about, but the fire's back over here. You see, the fire is this. You haven't dealt with the fire. The fire's still going back here, and it's burning really good, and you haven't dealt with that issue. And so something else happens, and it's just simply a false alarm, but not a false alarm, but something to simply say, hey, you just turned the air conditioner up or down or such and such. We're trying to save, money here, such and such. That would be the argument. When there's something back here is hasn't been dealt with, and it continues to be put on, it's not dealt with. And so it's going to explode somewhere else, usually. And so somebody will say, well, you need to deal with this. No. You need to deal with what's back here. What's going on, the fire. What's going on relating such and such. And as a child, as I was the oldest in the family, my brother was a year and a day apart, so that didn't work out well neither, because that creates what I would call enormous competition between two brothers. Didn't have any other siblings, that was all. So you're a year and a day apart. There's a lot of competition going on between two brothers, and there are a lot of fights that go on too because of that. And there's a lot of what I would call in the same category of both being Aries. Both brothers being Aries. You see. Are very close to it. And so I don't know how my parents well, I know how my parents figured that one out, but anyways, really it blows me away. A year and a day apart. I mean, that's just like someone, wow, but I know there's a reason for all these things because that has an effect upon me. But when my parents argue such and such, it bothered me because I'm still a sensitive child in some ways. I see things that bother me, and I see it, and I'm that's who I am. And my brother's completely opposite. It didn't bother him. So there was a personality difference because I would be closer to my mom, and then my brother would be closer to my dad. So the bond changes. I've noticed this. I was thinking about this the other day too. Also, between me and my brother, was that I did things with my father when it came to sports related deals. In other words, if I wanted to go to see a baseball game, see the Atlanta Braves, or I wanted to go to a football game, I would go with my dad, such and such, or any kind of sporting event, such and such. We would do things of this nature. But my brother was not into sports, such and such. But yet, when there was issues with, I can remember these things. And I came from a pretty decent family. I'm not saying they were perfect, but my parents didn't drink. They didn't get into alcohol. They were not into any kind of stupid stuff. There wasn't anything what we call big time. It wasn't anything my parents were involved in drugs. It wasn't anything to do with, you know, my dad into pornography, nothing of that nature. So I came from a relatively somewhat stable background, although that's, when I'm talking about, that's not truly stable always. But I remember simply his dad was far more sensitive to what was going on as the oldest child. And so that's what, in some ways, simply is I was, at first, when I was dating people in the 20s, when I was in college, I didn't date anybody really in the high school whatsoever. It's just too young to date at that point for me. But anyway, I dated people such and such, and I would lose interest in many girls. I date them and then I lose interest. Or I found someone I really was interested in, but I realized simply is that she wasn't the right person for me, and I lost interest. So I'm pretty picky about who I want to be around. But we're all picky in certain ways. But the key is I'm got off tangent here a little bit, but I wanted to share with you just some things that goes on. So my mom had enormous impact upon my life. My dad too, but in different regards. And so my personality is strongly adhering to very being sensitive to what's going on all around me. You see. And it's important. And so to me, in a relationship is simply being intimate, being close friends. That's the most important thing to me, besides the heart-to-heart connection. Also having the same interests. That is, I'm interested in spiritual things, and that's what I'm looking at. And that's not the major thing, but that is, and also simply is the person a principle-oriented person, that they have character, who they are, and what they're about. Are they truly someone who is real and authentic? Which is kind of, I remember getting on a dating site 2 or 3 years ago, and just it was a joke, and and it didn't take long for me to just lose. It was disgust because these people were playing games. We're talking about 45, 50-year-old people, 55-year-old people playing games still. And everything to what I saw as they thought was important was being successful, having money. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what life's all about. Not to me. Yes, I can take care of myself, such and such. Yes, da 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 da. But there's this whole niche that people are jumping from one ship to the other ship. In other words, they change something and they change and they jump on this ship. You see, I just see this tremendously around me, is that the next nuance is introduced, someone jumps onto that particular wagon. And then within 2 or 3 years, they lose interest in that and they jump on another ounce, another thing that's out there prevalent, which is introduced by the media, you see, or ways of dealing with such and such, which are nothing but quick fixes that actually never solve the problem. They're not dealing with the traumas. They're not dealing with the traumas. That's what's happening. And that's the key. And if you don't deal with those things and forgive your parents and come to the understanding simply is that I understand. Because you know what? I make mistakes too, see. And I can't hold you, my parents, to high regard if I can't do it myself, you see. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, How would I deal with this in such and such period? And you realize simply is you don't really have any way to complain here, Brant. You're being too uppity here. You need to understand simply is your parents tried to do the best they could do. And that's what you have to do. You have to understand it. So you come to an understanding and say, my parents did the best they could. Let it be. Forgive them. Let it go. Not important. Don't hold on to it. It's not worth it. You see? It's the same thing. It's part of living and learning and growing. But this is the thing I see tremendously evolved is that everybody's concentrating on the cherry at the top of the ice cream and the whatever else is dessert you have, a chocolate cake, and it's not the most important thing. See, it's your connection with the other person. It's the whole deal. We all want to be loved. We all want to be loved by someone. And yet, the other person wants to be loved also. It's got to be mutual. It works both ways. So just think about that. So this the whole issue simply is that it's putting major things that really actually are minor. That's what's going on. It's a preoccupation of something that's actually a minor issue that can be dealt with, and yet it's put up at number one in our society. And as I see more and more young people, it's even far more focused on that. In fact, most of it's not even based upon any kind of relationship. A lot of it's simply based upon one night stands. It's just, get in bed and do our thing, and that's it. Because that's what they want. Let me explain what they want. Those who rule this planet on this plane want us to continue to treat one another and create traumas in their life, and in not only your life, but other people's lives. They want to spiral mankind downward instead of upward. And that's why we live in an age of rebellion, enormously in everywhere you can see it. And now people are far more lost. That is, I'm saying you can't be lost in other directions. You can, but people are far more lost than they ever have been because they were never loved by their parents. See, the whole breakdown of the family is a whole issue. You see, and with the breakdown of the family, meaning that there's no love in the family, there's no daddy, there's a mommy that doesn't know how to love her children, or either doesn't have the financial support, or not just the financial support, but the support period in their lives. And that was the whole idea. See, this is the destroying of the family. And so when the family's destroyed, that doesn't mean that the mommy daddy are not destroyed. Now the trauma is on the kids and what they have to face, because they have to face things later on in their life that they don't know how to deal with because they were not even loved. And I'm not saying my parents were perfect in that area either. You see, I'm just saying simply is that today it's much harder for kids because mommy and daddy don't love one another most of the time. Or their perspective changed. In other words, their goals changed. In other words, no, we're not going that direction. I don't That's not what I'm. That's not what we first assigned. This is not what I was about. This is not what I wanted to do. We're going in two different directions here. So the reality simply is that I see this, and you see this at Christmas time, that parents don't have time for their kids anymore. And so out of guilt, they buy Christmas gifts for their kids and go in debt instead of actually love their kids when they don't know how to love their kids in the first place, because they saw their parents do the same thing for them. So they say, it's a continued saga, just continue to repeat, do the same thing in the long run. To me, intimacy is deeper. It deals with simply is that you're sharing things from your heart. And yes, you're vulnerable. Yes, you are. And you can get hurt that way. But you know what? That's the only way to love. It's the only way you can love someone. It's from your heart. You can't be calculating here and that, such and such. That's the only way you can love someone is from their heart. And if you don't, then you built your relationship on a faulty foundation. You see. So hopefully, I help some people, or maybe people like to chime in sometime and ask questions. But this is a situation that isn't going away, and it's getting worse. And I'm 60 years old, and I'm seeing this, and I'm like, yeah, I can see this. Mommy and daddy don't love each other. They stick together. Some people just stick together because they don't have anywhere else to go. So they live in hell in some ways too. They're not in love with the person anymore. They're just, it's just another body, per se. Okay, it's running a little long here. It's about 35 minutes, so I need to go here. I hope that this helps others out there. Again, like I said, appreciate some questions. If you have some, take care. Thank you. Good night.